time, aren't they? Because they're on a schedule always.
Right? It's perfect. These are my kind of people.
Hi, Kathleen. So, Jeremy, we're expecting you to know everybody, by the way. We're
Oh yeah, oh
expecting you to
yeah.
be name checking absolutely everybody. Hello, Shan? Oh, look at this. It's all coming in. Lovely. Oh, we've been so excited. We've been really, really looking forward to um, this webinar. So excited to work with Jeremy and Elizabeth on the content, making sure everything's going to be really relevant for everybody. We'll get to some introductions and to get to our slides in a couple of minutes, but it's really nice to see everybody here. Chile, Idaho. I heard that, is it right, Jeremy, that obviously talking about the weather is a really, really great filler, but St. Louis was like -9 or something, just absolutely outrageous.
Oh yes. Yeah, Missouri had some very, very rough weather. We were under 20 degrees Fahrenheit for about a week and a half straight. So that was fun.
It's not acceptable. Well, it is sunny and blue sky in Bedford. I'm in the UK here. And we're just getting through we've got through our winter. It's March 6th. Clocks are going back at the weekend. I think spring is here.
It's not very often that me up in rural northern Canada gets to have the nicest weather, but like, sorry to the Americans freezing today. It's above freezing up here now. It's great.
Hmm.
Other than my dog's perpetually covered in mud at this time
All
of year, but
right.
it's fine.
Yeah, we all have that. Hello, Kim in Northamptonshire. You're not very far from us because we are in Bedfordshire. So you're a sister shire for us. Oh, and
Panelists,
London.
can
Olivia,
we
hi
see my
from
screen?
London. Pardon, Becca?
Panelists, can we see my screen? Am I showing my screen well here?
Yep,
Yes, yeah,
yep.
yeah. We can
Yeah,
see
you're
you.
good.
Amazing. I'm going to throw myself and the panelists' LinkedIn links in the chat right now. If you guys want to join us on LinkedIn, please, we'd love to connect with you outside of this webinar. I mean, be my friend on social media. It would be great. So all of our links are going into the chat now. Please
Oh,
add us.
cool.
Also, share your own links. We want to be friends with everybody.
And send me, there's my Bridget Harris. Send me a connection request and say that you saw me on the webinar. I'd love to be able to say hi to everybody. I love LinkedIn. I love the Bay Area. I love that. That's just so kind of broad and general. Like I'm from the Bay Area and everybody knows. Petoskey.
Petoskey.
Petoskey, is it? Petoskey. Where are you, Elizabeth? I don't know if I knew. Where are you based?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, but
Oh,
spent
Cincinnati.
have a lot of family in Michigan and lived there for about 15 years in Ann Arbor.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay, fine. We used to know somebody who worked from Ann Arbor who lived in Ann Arbor. Oh, this is wonderful. Nobody more is it anybody from Bedfordshire? That's what oh, somebody's from Ann Arbor there. Look, Megan. Oh, it's lovely to
yay.
say hi to everybody. So thank you so much for joining us.
Just for curiosity's sake here, we're going to get started in 2 or 3
Yes.
minutes here, guys, because we are still a little bit early. 110 of you showed up super early. I love that. That's amazing. But I would love to know, like, if you are an EA, how long have you been in your role? And if you have a different kind of role, tell us about it. Like, let's get to know each other in the chat here, guys. We've got a couple more minutes to go to make friends, and then we will jump into the content here because we do only have the 1 hour with each other.
Yeah, and so many people have joined. It's been really exciting. We are so pumped for this because we're expecting lots of interaction, lots of questions. As well as Becca, we also have Anna and our friend Kate helping moderate the call because there's so many of you. We really want to make sure that you guys get as much value out of this. So we got Lindsay's been an EA for 2 years today. Congratulations, Lindsay. Tristan's been in the job for 7 months. Well, you've got a long way to go because look, Sarah's been in 20 years over her job. So I think there's something very, very special about this job. You get very, very good at it, you get very passionate about it, and you get very experienced about it. I personally, as we're waiting, my background a long time ago before I ran You Can Book Me, I was a diary manager for an MP in Westminster. So I know all about trying to manage somebody else's life. In fact, I managed one of the most disorganized and famously late MPs ever in Westminster. And you'll be glad to know that I completely turned his office around with some really interesting strategies that I had. So it's that kind of personal insight that I know you all have for the people that you work with that makes this job very, very special. We've got some
These
really experienced
years,
people here.
couple of you, like this is
33
impressive
years ago.
numbers.
A university president, my goodness, that is a busy person's job.
45 years, the one person in the chat. That's so cool.
Who are you? BFINN01. What's your names? We can congratulate you. That is a long time. And I'm so excited to see you on the webinar and still learning. After 45 years, you still want to learn. It's amazing.
Her name is Brenda. Awesome. Brenda,
Brenda,
that's
thank
wild.
you.
That's so
Welcome,
cool.
Brenda. Well, we could just spend the whole hour, Becca, just looking through the chat. It's all here.
I want to hear, I've got an extra question, a bonus question. I want to hear, how many executives do you support? 1, 2, 3, 7.
Oh,
how many
good
executives do you
question.
support?
Ooh.
10?
5.
Oh
My
my
goodness.
goodness.
5 of them.
20? Okay, all right, Lori.
20, come on.
Holy man, that's just
7
super
plus 11
at that
board
point.
members. Wow.
30, sorry, holy man.
So we
Oh,
all have our hands full, is what you're saying.
Well, also, I think it's showing that you're carving out some time for us today, so we don't want to waste it. We are really grateful and privileged that you're joining us on this call. Everybody that's joined us here, we're here to talk about the Insider's Guide to the Perfect Week. And what we've got here is, a panel. I'll introduce myself first, but let me just hand you over to Becca, who's really going to take you through some of the basics. Becca, you go ahead.
Absolutely. We're getting started here, guys. For those of you who are inevitably going to ask, yes, I am recording this. Don't you worry. And it's also being live streamed to YouTube as we speak. So if you have to dip early, the recording will be posted to our YouTube immediately. So don't worry if you have to dip. It is absolutely being recorded. But thank you so much for being here today, guys. I'm going to get into some giveaways and stuff momentarily. But first, Bridget is here to introduce the panel.
Yes, so I am Bridget, co-founder of YouCanBookMe. We are an online scheduling tool. You might have already clocked that, but I've been doing it for about 12 years. And I'm just really, really delighted to invite our two guests, Elizabeth and Jeremy, on, who both do slightly different jobs. Elizabeth's the chief of staff, Jeremy's a senior executive assistant. So first of all, let me go to Elizabeth, and I'm going to ask you the same question, which is, what is the best thing and the worst thing about your job, your role, Elizabeth? And tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, first of all, welcome everybody. I've been working as chief of staff to the chief executive officer at Simplero for about 2 years now, but I've worked at Simplero for 6 and kind of morphed my way into the job, which we can talk about later if we have time. Best and worst thing, best thing would be the people that I work with. I have an amazing team all over the world. Everybody's excited to show up at work every day and do their best work. It's just an amazing culture. Worst thing, I think, would be the fact that we are going in a million different directions all of the time. And so it's a lot to keep up with, and you never know. It's a good thing. You never know what the next day is going to look like, but it can also be a challenge.
Okay. Jeremy, I think everybody on this call knows you personally, Jeremy, but still, for the sake of the recording, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, I've been an executive assistant for 19 plus years. I am from Kansas City and currently live in Kansas City. I lived in St. Louis for 16 years working for my company Capacity. And my favorite part about being an assistant is that there is never a dull moment. Every day is different. It keeps me on my toes. I'm never bored. Can never say that I'm bored in my job. And then least favorite part is probably dealing with the people who think that they need my CEO's time all the time.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling very much. So let's just go through what content we've decided we've curated for you all today. We're going to talk about the ideal week, which is how do you structure your time for maximum impact. This is something that both Jeremy exercises in his office and Elizabeth does as well. I'm going to dig in a little bit to how they communicate. This is not just company-wide tools, but what tools are they using to communicate with their executives? See what tips we can pick up there. As you can see, Jeremy's technically an executive assistant. Elizabeth is technically a chief of staff, but I'm interested in how do they describe their roles? What are the differences? And I think we want to sort of dive in a little bit to the career opportunities. Plenty of people on the call have got years and years of experience here, and I'm just interested for the newbies, for the people like Tristan who've only been in the job for 7 months, what to expect. Where could we be going with this? Then I think I'm just going to hand you over to Becca, who's going to talk about the opportunity to ask questions, but also what are the giveaways? What are the things that we're going to give away today, Becca?
Absolutely. Let's do it here, guys. So a few things we're going to give away today. One, I can't believe we actually got this greenlit, but we're giving away the longest free trial of You Can Book Me I've ever heard of since working here. So anybody on this call who's never used You Can Book Me before, if you want to check it out, we're giving away 60 days of our professional level of the tool for free. So
And
there's
I'm going to interrupt you, Becca, because I have to say, as the CEO of You Can Book Me, nobody asked me whether this was okay. Nobody asked me. This has just flashed up. So Becca's just basically chucked this in. And I'm sure she's good for it. But I'm assuming, Becca, this is only for the people who are on the live call, aren't they? This is not for the recordings, because otherwise, no.
Absolutely. If you're live in the call, I have your details already, and we can chat and get you that free time period. If you're watching this on YouTube 3 years from now, sorry.
Long gone, long gone.
Gone, gone, gone.
No, but it's a gift from us, and we hope you enjoy using the tool. What else?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's go into the rest of it. We're going to talk about ideal week, how Jeremy, Elizabeth, and Bridget structure their time to honestly just be more productive and work better with their colleagues. And Jeremy has built the template to do it. And oh my gosh, it makes it feel so much less overwhelming. So we're going to give that away for free today. And then finally, Jeremy wrote an awesome book. And we're going to be giving away the first couple chapters for free to absolutely everybody. But then 2 lucky people are going to be getting solid copies that we'll be mailing out to them as well. And you can win that at the end.
Okay, so Jeremy, I assume you've signed it. I assume these books are signed.
Of
They're going to be
course. I don't know if you
perfect.
can read the signature, but they're signed.
Very exciting.
I
Excellent.
mean, there better be an autographed one coming my way too, bud.
Yeah,
Just
I
saying.
want one as well.
And then finally, guys, obviously this chat is popping off. There are literally hundreds of you on this call. So please, if you have a question for our hosts, do not throw it in the chat. It will get lost. Look at how fast this chat's building. There's a Q&A button right there in the middle of your screen, bottom of your little Zoom panel. It says Q&A. Put your questions in there. It'll come directly to the hosts. If you put it in the chat, it's lost. Let's be honest. And with that, let's get started.
Okay, thank you very much, Becca. So, ideal week. We want to like crack through a lot of this discussion so that we can get to your questions and we can learn from everybody on the audience as well. Tell me about what the ideal week is, Jeremy. Where does it come from? What does it mean? If people aren't implementing it, what should they be doing? Just tell me about it.
Yeah, great topic to jump into. So I used to just kind of throw things on the calendar as they came across my inbox. And over time, my executive and I realized that this was not very efficient. And I came across this concept called the ideal week. And it was Michael Hyatt that I originally heard this from. And it was basically the idea of saying, hey, you know what? When do you want to have meetings? When do you not want to have meetings? When do you want to have internal meetings versus external? When do you want to have those really important in-person brainstorming sessions with the leadership team where you're making big decisions? You know, like, are you a morning person or are you an evening person? And so I essentially set up this concept with my executive, and we haven't looked back. And so I think it's more exciting to have this process because I'm not just a time manager anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more of an energy manager. And so I'm managing the most
love
valuable asset of my organization, which is my executive's energy.
Let's take a look at it, Becca. If you can show me what it looks like. I think that I've seen this obviously before, but talk us through this because one of my first observations here is there's a lot of personal stuff on this calendar, and I think that might be a real sort of really important question for a lot of EAs starting in their roles. Like, how on earth do you manage somebody's personal life at the same time as managing their professional life? And talk, because you obviously have worked with David for a long time, so you know him, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's personal. How do you manage that, Jeremy?
Yeah, great question. So my philosophy is that my executive has one life, right? It's not necessarily work-life balance, it's life balance. And the other thing that my executive and I are on the same page about is my executive has 3 goals: stay healthy, stay married, and stay in business.
Okay.
And when it comes to my job is to help my executive stay healthy, stay married, and stay in business. And that includes physical exercise, that includes emotional well-being, that includes date nights and not scheduling board meetings or board dinners on the same night as date night, all those types of things. And so I think that even if you don't do specific personal assistant work for your executive, maybe you support a VP of sales and it's not really part of your job, you should at least be aware that, hey, they have 4 kids and Thursday nights are a really crazy family night, and I'm going to try to avoid that. And so that's kind of why I think that it's important to be aware of both their personal and professional life.
So I've got 2 questions about this. The first is, how does that impact your personal life, Jeremy? Because you're not on call 24 hours for your executive. So how do you manage that with David? And then secondly, how often does David try to sabotage his own ideal week?
Yeah, great question. So we kind of started off with, I burned out in my last role, and I talk about this in my book, my burnout story. But we started off working, when I worked with David, is I sat down and I said, hey, I'm going to be the best freaking assistant you've ever had, but you're going to leave me alone on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just had this idea that, like, and he said, listen, this isn't a 40-hour job, right? This is a startup. This is not going to be clock in at 8, clock out at 5, and Monday through Friday, and that's it. But what we did, though, is, and he burned out in his last role, so it was a good season for us to both do this start together. But he's like, hey, if we're gonna have a busy week where we're working 70 hours, we're gonna funnel those extra hours into Monday and Wednesday nights. And so that way our family knows, our spouses know, hey, you know what? Monday night, Dad might have to work late, but Tuesday night, he's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And so that allowed us to have the flexibility and the bandwidth to really run a startup with crazy hours.
Because you had
and
boundaries,
craziness.
you had
But
choices.
we had the boundaries so that we could say, hey, you know, we're going to shut off and it's going to be okay.
Right. But then personally for you, does he ever call on Sunday, or does he respect those boundaries?
He's really great about it. I can probably count on one hand how many times in the 8+ years that he's actually called me on it
Mm-hmm.
on a weekend. And when he does, it's actually something that he needs.
Right.
It's pressing. It's
Super
actually
urgent.
urgent.
Okay, so the other question was, how often does he try to actively sabotage his own ideal week? How much you tearing your hair out because he was supposed to be, doing
Yeah, I
one
mean,
thing, and you find him secretly doing something else.
this version that we're showing on the screen was probably 1.4, and right now we're probably on version 7.3. And so the idea is that it adapts constantly and it always is evolving. And so if you're one of those people that doesn't like change, this is not going to work well for you. But if you're okay adapting and embracing change, then you're going to be okay. And I think that he will. There are seasons where the ideal week goes out the window because we just need to have 400 investor meetings in 3 months,
Right.
and we're just going to do whatever we can.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Elizabeth, because you're in a slightly different role. You're not managing your executive's time, are you? But you do have to manage your time because of your role as chief of staff. You're very close to him. So talk to me about what this week looks like, and how does it work in your role as chief of staff?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things you'll notice right away is all that light purple lavender time that I've got marked as focus time. That's time partially for me to do things that I need to do, but it's also time that my executive and I have blocked out to be able to work together on whatever the projects are that we're doing. So I am available during those chunks of time for him to call, text, like whatever it is that he needs, and we'll hop in and work together on whatever needs to be done. So I'm intentionally protecting time that he is also protecting so that we're available to work together.
So you're matching your ideal week and his ideal week matches.
Roughly, yeah, not entirely, but there's a lot of, we intentionally book significant overlap.
Can I ask you a question? So this open office hour, as chief of staff, is that you taking questions from staff to basically protect a little bit of your CEO's time?
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's time that I'm available for the rest of our team to just drop in and be like, I'm stuck on this, help me with whatever. I think I need Calvin to approve this, but I want to show it to you first. We have a very clear process for decision making, and it includes murky stuff has to go through Beth and get clearer before it goes to Calvin. And so those are the blocks of time people can do that. It is verboten at Simplero to go to the boss and say, I need help. And like, it's murky and I don't know, muddly. Yeah.
And so this is a question that, I mean, both you and Jeremy are doing this to an extent, but I'm just interested in the difference, is that you're doing a lot more product and, and operational stuff in terms of the implementation, the organization of the company. But Jeremy, you're doing kind of more work-life balance, but either way, you're trying to get your executive, onto the right tracks. It's still it's an enabling role, isn't it?
Yeah. We're trying to manage the energy. We're trying to reduce decision fatigue. And so this structure allows us to have intentionality when we're assimilating all the inbounds.
So I want to show you what my week, my ideal week looks like, which is it's very, very different because I don't have an EA, and I'm kind of here on this webinar to basically be convinced that I should have one. This is what I want to understand from all of you on this call why if you're an executive, you should have an EA. And I can show you what I do, and you wouldn't be surprised, but I use my own tool. You can book me. So everything in the purple blocks. That's actually time that is carved out for booking. So I have multiple different booking links, and I'm sure Becca can share them what they are, but they're basically things like demo.youcanbook.me, bridget.youcanbook.me, customer showcase.youcanbook.me. These are different You Can Book Me links, and they link into specifically those time slots that I have. So you can see I'm available for demos on 3 days a week. I'm available for customer calls on 2 days a week. I'm available for external calls on 3 days a week. But I actually don't have, I'm trying not to do calls on a Monday or a Friday. But like Jeremy said, when David's doing lots of fundraising, if I'm doing lots of demos, I will make time available on a Monday or a Friday to do it. And then I've got my regular one-to-ones and things. So I'm doing it very, very differently. I'm trying to basically manage my time through my You Can Book Me links, but I don't have an EA. So my real question to Elizabeth and to Jeremy and to everybody on the call, like if you were talking to me as a prospective EA, what would you say to me about why I need an EA?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the big thing is, well, the kind of cheeky answer would be say, why not? Why not an EA? But yeah, I think the ultimate thing is, what is on your plate, and if it's overwhelming, and no matter what it is, to be honest, if it's overwhelming and you feel like you are not able to accomplish your goals or reach your goals at the pace that you want to reach them at, then you need an assistant. And I think the idea of well, I just have certain ways I like to do things, or it's going to take me too much work and time to teach someone to do things the way I want them done. I'm just not going to do it. I get that from executives all the time. But the executives that actually push through that barrier are like, I wish I would have done that a long time ago.
Yeah,
Well,
you're just trapping yourself in a hamster wheel if you're doing things
yeah.
that somebody else could learn to do and do for you and free up your time. I didn't think I needed a perfect week until our EA made one for me. And I was like, oh, holy crap. Like, I so needed your help. She looked at my calendar. She's like, what are you doing? Like, you've got meetings everywhere. How do you get anything done? I'm like, and she fixed it.
Here's the question. Here's the point. If you don't have an ideal week, then you have a week that is not ideal. And nobody wants a week that is not ideal. I've got a few questions here that I want to bring in at this stage because we're talking about it. Lauren wants to know, Jeremy, how long did it take you to develop it? So you said that you were on this was your 7th iteration. How long did it take to develop this and ultimately get the buy-in from your executives to let you implement and stick to this? Did you and David just come up with this at the very beginning and just went for it, and then you've just been iterating it ever since, or did it take you a while? Let's go back to Jeremy's ideal week, Becca.
Yeah, I think thankfully for this, I had already been using this with my prior executive for years. And so I started off with David and I was like, hey, we gotta implement this. And he's like, I love it. And then we adapted it as we went, and we still, like I said, are adapting it. But if you've been working with an executive, supporting multiple executives for years, and you don't have this, don't feel overwhelmed like there's no way this could happen. Instead, think, okay, what's a baby step? What's a small step that I could do to get a quick win? And for example, that could be as simple as, hey, I'm not going to schedule any more meetings on Fridays between 9 and 11 a.m. Like that's step one.
Right.
And once you show the quick win and show the impact that even that 1-2 hour block a week can have, you'll have more flexibility to broaden that with your executive once you prove that it's helpful.
Okay, well, look, there's a couple more questions I'm looking at here, which is, first of all, Shalomi wants to know how many individuals are in the organizations that Jeremy, so we can answer that very quickly. Jeremy is about 200.
Yep, about 200.
And Elizabeth, how many people are in your team?
Yeah, we're much smaller, about 35.
Okay, fine. So there's quite a few questions. Sonia and Chanel and Liz are all asking similar questions, which is what happens when people breach the boundaries? What happens when you've got other people trying to schedule into you've either got your executive trying to schedule meetings at the wrong time because they just think their calendar is free, or Elizabeth, they're trying to go over your head and not go to your office hours, instead go to the boss directly, or you've just got people trying to fight you. Like, how do you two get your authority inside? I mean, in terms of your roles, where are you getting your authority from? At what point do you actually have to draw the line? Elizabeth, what would you say?
Yeah, two things. I mean, it comes from the executive, right? Like the CEO has to be the one that lays down the law and says, you do not bring that to me until it has gone through so and so. And if somebody circumvents that, they say, hey, did you talk to Liz about this? Like, I don't see Liz's imprint on this. Like, please take it to Liz and bring it back. Like, they have to be on
Okay.
board with it and they have to set that tone. Um, and then also, I think building trust is about building relationships, right? So I spend as much time as possible checking in with people and being on their side.
But
So,
basically you have to train your executives. I mean, there's people here
yes,
like Nina, who says that
yes.
she's been sort of trying to train her executive for years to stop agreeing to external meetings. So in some ways you need a
So,
polite way to say no to the people that
yeah.
your execs promised, but you're now saying no.
Well, so that's an executive who wants to have an external meeting. So like I think it's a conversation with them then about like, why is this more important to you than the focus work that you said you were going to do? Help me understand why you chose to take that meeting instead of working on the blah blah blah.
Yeah,
And it's about understanding what's really going on in their head.
it's
They have
fascinating.
a reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Candace says that their executive has an open door policy. So fighting your executive is absolutely fascinating, because going back, Jeremy, to your ideal week, you've got David's world absolutely penned out when you compare it to mine. Like, nobody's telling me when I'm going to have lunch, but then often I don't have lunch, so that's probably the one of the problems. So, like, Jeremy, how much do you need to police this with David?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of again, flexibility week in and week out, based on the priorities. But I think the key though is if you zoom out, what are the high level goals of the organization in that quarter, in that year, and as
Mhm.
Link it
things
to
pop
goals.
up, yeah,
Yeah,
as things pop
Yes.
up, as you're getting requests, it's like, well,
right.
listen, this is Q1, and our Q1 goal was blank, and this doesn't quite fit with that, so we're going to push that
Okay.
off a few weeks.
All right, I love
Yes.
that. So you
Yes.
basically have to train your executive. You have to link it to the goals, and you also have to have a sort of a battery of answers and responses back to when people are trying to input you. And can I just say, I mean, if you go back, Becca, to my You Can Book Me, there is a role, and we're going to come on to this. Don't worry about online scheduling. Whereas You Can Book Me doesn't have to you can't negotiate with an online scheduling tool. It's either saying to you that's the time she's available or not. And Becca, you use this, don't you? You book me, so I don't technically have open hours like Elizabeth does. But if you book me, I know you're going to be booking me on a Tuesday morning or a Thursday evening. That's when I'm going to get the call booked from you. You find it quite helpful, don't you?
Oh, especially considering Bridget and I work quite closely together, but we have a 7-hour time difference. So,
Mhm.
I mean, we could send 18 emails back and forth, but that's terrible use of both of our times when her scheduling tool can tell me when she has
Yeah.
availability, actually works for her life. So
So
why would
let
I bother reaching out when I can just book her?
I love it when you book me. I love it. I love it when people book me. I get a text and everything. Right. So let's move on, Becca. Um,
Absolutely.
tell us about this. Tell us about your book. Jeremy, you
Yes.
were talking about it.
Just a reminder, guys, to stick around real quick. We're going to be doing all these giveaways at the end. Also, I know we've had a ton of Q&A questions coming in, and we've been answering some of them live as we go, but the rest we're going to answer at the end. So please just stay tuned. We're going to be giving away signed copies of the book. We're going to be giving away, I've seen it in the chat a few times, yes, the ideal week template. We're going to share it with you at the end of this call.
Excellent.
So don't worry, it's all coming to you. And with that, let's talk about communication.
Okay. So we've just been talking about boundaries and chatting to executives. How do you communicate with your executive? David, Jeremy, what do you do?
Yeah, so I have a kind of a tier system, and I don't use any special new tool. We use the standard Slack, which some of you will use Teams if you're in Microsoft. We use text, phone call, old-fashioned phone calls, and emails, which now some people would say are old-fashioned as well. But I'm an email fan. Long live email. But yeah, so we do the tier structure and the kind of a hierarchy. So for example, if my CEO calls me, then I'm going to pick up and answer no matter what I'm doing or where I'm at. And it's like, I know something's wrong. I know something time sensitive is going on, and he doesn't abuse that. He doesn't call me because he can't find his blue socks for his road trip. Like that's kind of a partner agreement there, on to not abuse that privilege. If he texts me, it's a similar sense of urgency, but it's, a few minutes. I'm going to get back to him within a few minutes. If he sends me a Slack, maybe it's 10 or 15 minute expectation. It's not as like super urgent typically. And then if he emails me, it's like, okay, well, within 24 hours, I'm gonna handle this. And so we kind of have this idea so that it helps us not treat everything as urgent by texting or calling everything. And then it helps the expectations of, hey, you know what? I called you, you didn't answer. We have this agreement that if I call, I need something right then. And so that helps us with communication.
Elizabeth, what do you do with your executive?
Yeah, so it's funny because very similar to what Jeremy does in terms of response times and venues. We've added something recently, well, about a year ago, called Tuple, Tuple, and it's a tool that's originally built for coders, for programmers. Our CEO is also the person who coded the software product that we run, and he leads our engineering team. So we're using this software, and it allows you to screen share as well as remotely access each other's computers. So I can like move things around on his desktop and click over there and be like, okay, this is the thing we were talking about, open that. Like he can do the same on my computer. And it also enables us to kind of drop in. It's like a Slack huddle, but so much better, so much more fun.
Okay, I have to have a look at that. I haven't heard of that before.
It's really great. And so we tuple each other. Like we have kind of agreements in the company about when you are available on Tuple and when you're not. And if you're available on Tuple, anybody can just drop in on you and be like, it rings and you talk to them and you work out whatever it is. And it helps us get things done. Like, those things that it's going to take you 5 minutes to write it up, but if you could talk to somebody for 3 minutes, you'd get an answer. Right. Those things we tuple each other for. And we can ignore Tuple. Like you can decline. If you're busy, you just decline it.
Now,
so we have a lot of rules around it.
One of the things that I do, and actually Anna's here on the call, I work like this a lot with Anna, where we send each other voice notes on WhatsApp. Do either of you do that? So we can have entire conversations all day about a topic, which is just simply on voice apps. Do you do that?
We don't do the, my CEO and I are kind of, we prefer written communication most of the time. And if we need verbal, we'll just hop on a call.
So the deal for us is that our CEO will leave voice notes frequently, and it's on his EA to like summarize them if they're long and complex, like in writing for the rest of the company. Like that's part of her job. I prefer text, so I write back. He'll voice app me and I'll write him back. It works. Yeah.
One day you'll win there, Elizabeth, and you'll get a text back and completely freak you out.
No. I don't think so.
DKJ has asked, are you using any AI tools in your role? Because this is a really interesting one. WhatsApp will now automatically transcribe the voice note, which I think is amazing. So I can actually very quickly ascertain what the voice app is about.
Yeah. So will Telegram, which is really nice because I frequently can't listen. Like I'm on a call with somebody else and my CEO is sending me a voice message, but I'll have it provide me a transcription and I can see if it's urgent or not.
And I think it's definitely something to say. It's completely normal when you're working with executives who have quite, they have quite sort of short attention spans and they're quite impulsive, that they want to communicate instantly. They've had the thought, they want to be able to get the thought out, even though what you were saying, Jeremy, is that you actually have in effect like an SLA about, what your response times are going to be like. And am I right in saying that, what are your response times? You said it's instant if he calls, a couple of minutes if it's a text, 15 minutes if it's Slack.
Yeah, 24 hours if it's email. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent.
Our Slack is longer for us. Like that's 24 hours. Slack is 24 hours. Email is 24 hours. But,
okay. All right. Well, let's get on to the big topic, which is very interesting for me, which is scheduling tools. Now, I obviously have been running a scheduling tool for the last 12 years, so you know what side of the fence I'm on, but I am perfectly happy. In fact, I welcome a discussion with this, particularly with this community, because you are the most experienced and educated group of people that understand scheduling more than anybody else. So I understand that nobody's trying to teach you to suck eggs at all. The open question is, are you using a scheduling tool? If not, why not? Are you scheduling tool curious? Like what is happening here? So I think that Becca, you've got a poll ready for us.
I sure do. I want to know what the audience is thinking about this.
Yeah, and I don't want to
Bumping up
inadvertently.
now.
There we go. So I whilst we're chatting, I'm just like I've just logged into the chat because I just want to see. I don't want it all to kind of totally kick off. But first off, Jeremy, Elizabeth, why don't you just talk us through in what circumstances do you use an online scheduling tool?
Jeremy.
Yeah, I'll go first. Sure. So I used to use online scheduling tools very sparse because it was kind of this thing where it's like, oh, you're too good to send me some times, and you're too good to, you got to make me go do the work and whatever. But as AI and automation has gotten more trendy and accepted, even in the last 18 months, that shift has totally changed. And so I've been a lot more, um, maybe 91% is kind of my made up number, but it's roughly 9 out of 10 meetings I can automate. And so I use scheduling booking links to automate the back and forth scheduling. I use it to automate the reminders, instead of having to send manual reminders the day before to make sure people show up to calls with my CEO. I use it for automated rescheduling.
Right. So
And then
are you actually you're booking kind of effectively, you're using a scheduling tool like an internal scheduling event creator, because then you get all of those links later. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm basically setting up different links, like, for example, a coffee meeting with my CEO, a happy hour with my CEO, a
Right.
30-minute Zoom just networking call, a 30-minute investor call, so that the people that book on that link, I know they know that it's specifically, hey, he's going to pitch an investment in capacity. And so that way I can, for example, a quick example would be the investor call. The availability that I've set, the ideal week for that booking link is very, very open because we're trying to raise money and we're going to be flexible. But for the coffee link that I send out, that's very strict. It's like, there might only be one option every other week for that option. And so you're able to implement the ideal week using these automated tools.
Right, because that's what I would suggest, is that for, like, just as I said, for my diary, I use it for certain things. So if you're booking me on my link, it's because I don't want to have a meeting on a Monday or Friday, so it's never going to go in. But that's also a rule that I could have with an EA as well. Elizabeth, how do you use scheduling, online scheduling?
Yeah, very similar to Jeremy. We've got some scheduling links set up that are customized for particular things. So our CEO wants to do 2 member conversations per week with members in our community. And so we've set aside time on his calendar, blocks of time that are available for that. We send out that link. Any one of our members can schedule on that link. Once there are 2 booked for that week, the availability moves to the next week, and we free up the rest of it. The EA frees up the rest of his time on his calendar for other things. So it's a way to structure that and make that possible without driving ourselves crazy. We also use one for people who need to have a conversation with both myself and my CEO that merges our free time and sends that out. So that makes that possible without anybody having to pull their hair out.
So we had the poll results. Sorry, can we get them back up again? At least I was seeing them, Becca. It was absolutely fascinating. Just pop that seemed the poll results seemed to disappear. So what we've got here, is everybody seeing this? Everybody can see the poll results. Can you see them, Jeremy and Elizabeth?
Yep.
So essentially, 1 in 5 of everybody on the call is using a scheduling tool. Brilliant. And I can see this people are flashing up what they use and that they like it. But this is absolutely fascinating that 4/5 of the people on the call have either never used an online scheduler or did use it, but it didn't seem to work out, and they're not using it now. And I think that that's kind of a bit of a travesty. That I think we could be saving all of you some time. It doesn't matter whether, what tool it is, although I refer you back to Becca's completely ridiculous offer for You Can Book Me. But if you're not using an online scheduler for some of that time, Jeremy, you think you can basically use an online scheduler for 9 out of 10 of the cases when you're saying, this is David's lunch times, these are the times when you want to slot in, just pick a time. And you're not having to do the curating particularly. Or if you've actually know what the call is about, you can set the parameters for the scheduler. Is that correct? You could do that.
Yeah, and I think the issue is it's 2025, and it's literal waste to email back and forth for every meeting, for every reschedule, everything. And so if you want to level up and be a leader assistant, in my opinion, you really need to automate certain processes. And this is one of the most manual, repetitive, painful processes that you could automate as an assistant.
So we can't, obviously I'd love to devote the rest of the webinar to online scheduling, but we can't. It is absolutely fascinating. What I can see here is that Becca and Jeremy, maybe we should just do another webinar at some point where we are just literally specifically talking about online scheduling, if people would be interested. For that 70% of people who haven't done it and they really want to know, we could do a special online onboarding. Anybody who's taking a 2-month offer with us, we'll do an onboarding call just to show them how to do it. And like, I think there's tricks of the trade that I know I was talking to Jeremy about, like what do you do about your scary, very important VIP person? Well, you just create a booking page with their name in it, their link. So if I was booking David, who's a super important VIP person in capacity, I'd be like, can I have a meeting with David? Here's my link, Bridget_David at YouCanBookMe. And then suddenly you've got the VIP person's name in the link, and you can start to overcome some of the barriers. Anyway, we need to move on. You have to stop me from talking about that, but we'll come back to it. This is stop me from trying to talk about online scheduling, Becca.
It's almost like we're passionate about what we do. What a wild
Right.
concept. But that being said, guys, I'm getting the odd question here or there. Yes, we're sending out the templates. We're sending out everything at the end of this call. So yes, that ideal week template. Give me a little bit of time after this webinar to like edit the video and whatnot. I'll be sending out the video. The recording's coming. The slides are coming. The templates are coming, guys. I will send it all to you within 24 hours of this call. I just need a little bit of time to edit the video afterwards for when I inevitably stumble on my words. And then I will send that out to everybody. So you check your inbox. You'll get it but you'll get it before the weekend. Don't you worry. I'm all over it. Now let's get into our last little section here, and then we have our Q&A.
Yes, and we're already getting some questions in about chief of staff versus executive assistant. So there is a difference. How would you describe it in your terms, Jeremy and Elizabeth? How would you describe your role, but contextually how it would work with a chief of staff? I mean, maybe we could also ask in the chat how many of you work with a chief of staff or an executive assistant, either way. But Jeremy, why don't you start? What's your sense of what the difference is?
Yeah, I think the short version is an assistant like myself is focused on the CEO or their executive, and they're very head forward, almost narrow focused on the CEO. That's their goals are my goals. My job is to make sure that I can do as much of their job as possible so that they're continuing to move forward and progress. Whereas a chief of staff is generally looking out and around and up and looking at the leadership team and maybe coordinating with different departments. And they're working closely with the assistant as we can talk about a little bit too, but they're more looking at the team and project managing and that. So that's kind of the simplest way. I think Maggie Olson, my friend Maggie Olson, is the one that kind of gave me that example of looking forward as an assistant or looking around as a chief of staff. I think that's a really good way to put it.
Okay, that is really interesting. Elizabeth, how would you put it?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jeremy there. I like to think of, chief of staff, COS, like culture, operations, strategy. So it's my job to be keeping an eye on the company culture. What's missing? What do we need to improve? We're growing. Something has shifted. How are we going to get ahead of that? So it's that forward thinking vision piece. Operations, projects, what's failing, what's succeeding, who needs a little boost, who needs a little bit of encouragement. How do I best motivate all the different people on the team and work with their supervisors in order to have that happen? And then strategy, like working with the CEO on developing strategy and making sure that strategy comes to life. Like we talk a lot about how it's his job to have the vision and it's my job to bring the vision to life, and work with everybody in the company to bring the vision to life.
Well, I do think that both of them have this shared thing in common, which is that you are working directly for your executive, your CEO, the person who is implementing, or particularly chief of staff. And you need to have those boundaries, your boundaries there. So, I mean, if we want to sort of go on to the next one, Becca, which is how do we, how are we going to, how do you protect your own boundaries? How do you protect your executive's boundaries? There's a lot of questions in the chat about that. What would you say, and particularly, I suppose I'm asking this question for the people who are on the call, who are new to this role, they're new to working for very important people. Holly's just said you have to learn to say no. I appreciate that. But what happens if you're in your 20s, you're dealing with somebody in their 50s, maybe they're really they're an executive, they're used to telling everybody what to do, and yet it's your job to basically start to curate them. How do you do that? And so Elizabeth and Jeremy, I'm really talking to you about what you're, 20 years ago rather than right now, as you learned it. What would be your advice?
Yeah, I think it is too easy to say you have to learn how to say no, but I think that is the answer. And I think setting those expectations up front, so as opposed to being reactive with it, being proactive with it. Like when our most recent EA joined the team, she was very clear with the CEO that she is not available on weekends, period. She deletes Telegram off of her phone. She deletes Slack off of her phone. She is not available on the weekends. And he agreed to that. And that's how we work. So some of it is being proactive. Now that's pretty strong. And she's an amazing executive assistant. She has a lot of credibility in the bank to be able to do that. But figuring out ahead of time what those boundaries are. And then I think the other big piece for me is just being clear. Like if my boss calls me and I'm eating dinner and it's not a good time, but it's a phone call, so I know it's important, I'll text right back and say, I'm eating, we'll call you when I'm done. Is it urgent? Right? And he will write back and say, no, it's not urgent. It can actually wait till tomorrow. Never mind. Right? Mm-hmm. Great. Or he'll say, yes, actually it is urgent. Please call me as soon as you're free.
Right.
Sure. So it's communication.
Okay. So Jeremy, you were saying earlier that you did have an experience of burnout earlier on in your career where, I don't want you to obviously just talk all about that right now, but because you said it was in your book, but what did you learn from that then? Was that something to do with boundaries that helped, precipitate that?
Yeah, part of it was simply, as Elizabeth said, logging off and just not checking email. And even if your executive is pushing your boundaries and sending you emails at 2 a.m., that doesn't mean you need to reply to them at 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. And so just setting up and then communicating those boundaries. Say, hey, I'm logging off at 6. I'll see you in the morning, right?
And but I'm asking these questions for the people who are on the call who might be thinking this, because I think this is just as relevant. What happened if you think, yeah, but if I say no, I'm gonna get fired?
Yeah, most of the time, that's not true in my experience talking to assistants. You're not going to get fired if you say no. But you also have to be tactful on how you say no. And you have to, it's kind of more of a help me help you thing. It's not a personal thing like, oh, I'm not gonna respond and be responsive to you. It's a, hey, I'm gonna keep us going at a high capacity and a fast pace for a long period of time. And in order to do that, we have to have boundaries of logging off and resting and recovering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think the next one we're talking about is a career advice, because this is, again, really important for people who are on the call, and anybody in the chat can add in career advice as well. What career advice would you give to you, the past you? What would you say, Elizabeth, to you, setting out on this journey of working in a software company and working for a CEO in the way that you do?
Yeah, I guess I would say the most important thing would be to not put so much pressure on myself about figuring out what my long-term career was going to be. I'm trained as a social worker. I went to graduate school.
You're a social worker. You're a social worker.
Yes.
This is worrying.
Are you serious? Long time. Yeah.
So you mean really good
sexual assault.
Oh my God. So really good chiefs of staff equal good social workers. That says a lot.
I don't know. Maybe.
That says a lot about us.
So I did that for a long time. And then I stepped back from work for a while for family reasons. And when I came back, I wound my way into the software company and wound my way up into being chief of staff. I started doing support tickets at the software company that I work at. So some of it is just being really good at what you do. You do what you say what you're going to do, and then you do what you said then you do what you said. Yeah, that's how it goes. And you constantly deliver that way and focus more on delivering results than on what your title is.
Okay, so trust in your own skills, really.
Yeah,
for the early.
Absolutely.
And Jeremy, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, even back to that question about, hey, what if I get fired if I say no? I think what I would go back and give the advice to myself is to detach my worth as a human being from my work as an assistant. Because in my career, when I attached my worth as a human being to my work as an assistant, I overworked, I didn't say no because all of my value is wrapped up in the approval of my executives. And so when I learned to detach my worth from my work as an assistant, I'm okay saying no, because I'm like, you know what? Worst case scenario now, I think about the scenarios. I'm like, I get fired. Okay, that would stink. I really don't want to have to look
But
for a
from a
new
crappy
job.
boss. It's a crappy boss.
Right. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, now I can find another role that respects me like they should. So anyway, that's kind of my one word
Fantastic
task to you
advice.
is detach.
Thank you. Last point from us, 3 life confessions. Now, I said at the beginning, for those of you who arrived early, I've got my first confession that I used to run this was 30 years ago. So I was like 22, 23. And I run the diary. I used to run an office for an MP. So I've done this job of effective, chief of staff, executive assistant kind of role. And my boss was so chronically late for everything. He was a politician. That for some appointment, and I've literally never told anybody this. I've never told this online, publicly. I've never told the man. He's still around. He's not an MP anymore. But for the appointments where he was so chronically late that he could not afford to be late, like for example, if he was meeting nurses in an A&E, like in a emergency room, like if I had to send him as a politician to go and meet people who are doing real proper jobs, I would always put that appointment in his diary half an hour earlier than it actually was scheduled, because I knew he'd be late, and so then he'd arrive up on time. And so I've never told anybody that, but like these are my tricks of the trade when you're dealing with somebody that you knew he was always going to be late. I could never do anything about that. No, he never did, Shalomi. He never did, because he just was just really pleased with himself that everybody in the hospital seemed to think that, or the nursing home or whatever he'd done. Like I didn't do it routinely. It was just for the ones where I thought he cannot let these people down. So that's my confession. Elizabeth, what confession? I suspect you can't be as confessional as me because I've got a lot of time between me and when I was doing it. But what would you say?
I'm not sure it's a confession exactly. Maybe it's a secret weapon. But one of the things I have learned in my role is to consistently, like, those times when your executive is sending you way more things than you can possibly get done, and they're all urgent, and they're all like, you've got to, I've got sticky notes all over the place, right? Like I've got a million things that I need to do, to go back to them and in a grounded and calm way say, all these things are very important. Can you help me prioritize them? Can you help me work through these priorities? Because they understand that you can't work 24/7, that you're not actually a robot. You're not superhuman. Like you can't. So what are the priorities? And that helps us to, and then sometimes the thing I think is important isn't from their perspective. And so I'm running around stressing myself out, trying to get something done that's actually priority number 5, which then means that my CEO is going to be unhappy that I didn't get priority number 1 done. Right. But I wasn't aware that that was priority number 1 because I didn't ask. So,
okay. So your confession is that you're doing a certain amount of management of sort of time management.
Absolutely. A little managing up. Yeah.
Jeremy, what about you?
Yeah, my little trick is to say no without saying no. And so what I do is I put the ball in the requester's court. And so if somebody comes to me and they bug me and say, hey, can you do this? Can your executive do this? Whatever. I say, hey, thanks for reaching out. Would love to review this and consider it. Please shoot me an email with a little bit more context, and I'll get back to you. That's
okay.
Kind of
so you're moving to the email, the world of email responses, which is much easier to say no to when you're doing emails rather than
I find a lot of times people will just figure it out. It wasn't actually urgent. They didn't actually need the CEO. They just needed somebody to push them forward.
I want to head on to the questions, and I'm hoping, Becca, that you've had a look at some of the ones and picking out some of the ones of the topics that we haven't covered. But what I'm hearing here is communication, boundaries, respect, learning to say no, all adds up to being a really effective executive assistant. Becca, what questions have you got for us that we can answer in the last remaining minutes that we've got?
Amazing. I want to do these giveaways really quickly here as well.
Yes.
And then we can get into it, because I know some people, if we go over time in questions, it's recorded, guys. So if you have to bounce, that's cool. But let me do the giveaways while the majority of you are still able to stick around, if that's cool, Bridget. And then we can jump into those questions.
Okay. Well, look, thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around for this. Yes.
Perfect. First of all, 60 days free trial. You can book me professional. I just threw a poll up there. Share your email address. It's coming directly to me. It's not going to go public. The whole audience here isn't going to get your email, but give me your email address so that I can reach out to you and hook you up with 60 days free of You Can Book Me Professional. Holy man, we're already at 70. Some of you, this number is blowing up. So super cool. So like if you want to be hooked up with You Can Book Me Professional for 60 days free, shoot your email in there. Let's go. If you're not live, sorry, you're not live. Ideal week template. As I mentioned before, guys, I'm going to be sending out the recording, the slides, this template, everything in the next 24 hours. So check your inbox. It's coming through to you. As soon as I have a moment to quickly edit this video and post it, everything's coming your way. The leader assistant, Jeremy's book. Holy man, it was getting love in the chat. This book is fabulous. I'm also, when I send out that email in the next 24 hours or so, going to be including the first couple of chapters for free because Jeremy's awesome and shared it with us. But let's give away a couple of hard copies of the actual book. I don't know where I'm going to be mailing these out to, so let's find out together. No matter where you are in the world, we're going to get it to you. So please, in the chat, guess. And if you've read this book or you already have it, please don't spoil it for the rest of us. But there's a rapper referenced somewhere in this book. Guess the name of the rapper. And if more than one of you guesses the same rapper and you guess correctly, I'll just do a draw and we'll figure it out. I'll use a random generator or something. So it's cool if you guess the same one as somebody else, but give me all of the guesses here. Holy man, I think we have some favorites in here for sure. Amazing. Amazing. Keep it going here, guys. Keep throwing email address if you'd like. You can book me pro. Keep guessing the name of the rapper that you think is discussed in the book, and we will sort out those winners after this call. Finally, one last note. I'm hosting a webinar next week. It is on automation because do what? I do enough admin work. You do enough admin work. Let's automate some stuff, but you don't have to be a coder to do it. I am so not into custom coding. I'm not a web developer. I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. I know how to set up automations for my life and reduce my admin time. And myself and my coworker, Ben, are going to go through that. And that is next Thursday. That'll be links in the email. If you guys want to join us, it'd be so cool to see you there. Finally, let's do some questions. Holy man, do we have so many great questions, guys. If I don't get to your question today, don't worry. We'll email you after this or something because I want to make sure that you found the answers you're looking for. But to the audience.
So whilst you've been doing that, Becca, I've had a chance to have a little look through some, and I think there's some really interesting ones here. First of all, there's quite a lot of questions about scheduling. We won't deal with those now because we can definitely answer all of those questions directly. Kimberly's asking a one, which is my advice, any advice for someone who is an executive assistant to an executive director and director of operations, but also carries the title of office manager. My struggle is knowing when to say no to the team in an effort to prioritize, but saying no feels like I'm not fulfilling my office manager role at times. And somebody else says, how do you get credibility? Megan is asking for credibility and respect amongst the direct reportees of CEO. I don't have a voice now. These are really, I mean, Jeremy and Elizabeth, how did you two, at what moment did you realize that you actually had authority? People were going to say and do what you wanted to do. You know, at what point did you start to get into your stride, as it were, inside your company?
Elizabeth, you want to go first?
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, it's such a slow evolution, right? Like for me, at least, and especially because I came through different roles and my job kind of morphed as time went on, which I think is a common experience, especially in startups. When did I first realize? I don't know. That's a great question. I'm gobsmacked. I don't know. Go, Jeremy. Maybe I'll figure something out.
It kind of, for my prior executive, it took a while, and there were some times where he essentially would have to say, hey, when Jeremy speaks, it's like me speaking. When Jeremy communicates to you, it's me. It's on behalf of me. So respect that. And then just basically saying we're in sync so much that he's not going to go rogue, right? And then with my current executive, when we started off, I was hire number one. So we started off in 2017, real small with few engineers, and we'd go to sales meetings, and I'd go with my CEO, and he would introduce me as his assistant, but then he would say, Jeremy basically runs the company. because I
Yes.
did. I was running HR,
Yeah.
I was running finance, I was running all this stuff, and I'm not a people person and I'm not a math person. So I was like, this is not a long-term solution. So those kinds of things set the precedent and build that up. But if you don't have an executive that goes to bat for you, then you just gotta serve the work instead of worrying about what they say or don't say about you. And you just gotta do a good job, and you just gotta make sure that you're always looking to accomplish the company's goals and your executive's goals, and you're not so worried about
So,
how you are doing. You're worried
right,
about how the team is doing.
I'm going to ask,
Yeah.
and I'm just trying to find it because somebody asked this question in the Q&A and I can't find it now, who asked it. But do you check in with your executive every day? Do you have an actual face-to-face every day? The question was really, what she's doing or he's doing is sending them a list of things every week, but they don't have a regular one-to-one. Would you recommend that, or would you recommend that you have to insist on a one-to-one with your executive?
Yeah, I mean, I think different people in different companies are different, but I think that one-to-one time is critical, whether it's a phone call or a scheduled meeting or a tuple or whatever it is. It has to be, one-to-one direct interaction time, not through a note or Slack or, something in writing, because that's how you build relationships, and building that's how you build trust, and that's how you get on the same page. And that's how you get to that place where your CEO will say, as mine does, this is Beth, she's my right-hand woman. Anything you need from me, ask her first.
Right. And out of interest, Elizabeth,
Yeah.
do you have a one-to-one with his EA? Do you actually manage that person directly, or
No? Yeah, I don't manage her directly. She's managed by the CEO. The three of us have a weekly sync for an hour and a half where we do a ton of business. And then we have daily contact through Telegram, and then we tuple each other probably twice a day, in different configurations. And one of the fun things about tuple, I'm not shilling for tuple, but one of the fun things about it is that two people can be talking and you can add in another person. So he and I were just talking yesterday, and I was like, so I think we've got a little bit of a breakdown in communication here. This is what's happening. This is not what you want happening. How do we solve it? This is my suggestion. He's like, hang on, let's just tuple. And we brought in that person and laid it out, and on we went.
Becca, any other questions I've missed that you want us to pick up on?
Oh, I just have one that feels a little contentious, so I want to throw it out there. Holly's asking, Bridget, do you feel more convinced that you need an EA now?
I do. Do you know what? I got a VA last year, and I was very cross with myself because I was unable to overcome my own problems. And in fact, somebody else has asked this question, like, how do you teach your executive assistant? How do you teach your executive to learn how to use an executive assistant? Because I monumentally failed. I had a VA. I was still basically trying to book my own plane tickets. I just didn't know how to use her. So I think there has to be, maybe Jeremy, you need to write it, but there needs to be a book or something to help executives like me work out how to best use an EA. I mean, and that's the thing. I monumentally failed to be able to make good decisions. I can tell you what it is, and maybe we've got a few more last couple of minutes, but I can tell you what my problem was. I didn't know what I wanted until I thought about it and did it. So I couldn't explain it to her in advance because I hadn't thought about what it was that I wanted. So it was just like, oh, I just have to rely on her to kind of do all of the administrative stuff, which is not useful. What you want is somebody to do the thinking for you as well. So how quickly, Jeremy, did you get to know what David wanted and could understand it and save that time for him?
Yeah, part of it was I had been an assistant already for 9 years, so I knew what an assistant could bring. So I had that head start. And part of it was he had already had an assistant before, so he also knew what an assistant could bring and the value. I mean, I was hire number one. You don't hire your assistant as hire number one if you don't think that assistant's valuable. But there's still that personal preference and the partnership that you've got to learn and grow into. But I've actually had executives read my book and say, oh, this is what an assistant can do for me, right? And so it's just the idea of opening your mind and saying, all right, how can I delegate results versus trying to think, okay, what tasks am I going to delegate to an assistant? No, think about what results you want to get with your team and with your workflow and with your the plate that you've been given. And then, okay, I'm going to have somebody come alongside and help me get those results.
Right. And Elizabeth, if you ever sort of move into a different role as a chief of staff somewhere else, would you be a bit horrified if your executive didn't have an executive assistant?
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. Like both roles are really critical for moving a company forward, I believe.
Well, in the last minute, I just want to say, look, the team have not just the five of us on the call, but like we're still, got about sort of, well, 400 people are still here. We had 550, 600 topped out. It was amazing. What a wonderful group of people. And thank you very much, particularly to Jeremy, for introducing this community to us. We have really enjoyed getting to know that world. We're absolutely good for our word in terms of answering all of the questions. We'll go through them now. Becca is your point of contact. You've been absolutely amazing, all of you. Thank you very much to Elizabeth, kind of being brought in as the chief of staff dimension to this. Jeremy, you've been amazing. And I just think for me, my lesson here is communication, boundaries, and very well